Once again, we live. Pro Beez, Benji, Pep Talk UK. It is a party once more. Benji, how are you, mate?
I'm not too bad. It's good that we sorted out those little technical issues, which is why we're on slightly later than advertised. If you saw our tweets and things that we put out to advertise this. But of course, as always, hello all. Pleasure to be back with Mr. Pro Beez, one of the best sources of boxing news, information, interviews. Interviewed Bob Arum only the other day. Massively impressed. I was like, I was talking to the wife. I said, look, he's interviewed Bob Arum. How cool is that? Everyone needs to check out that interview. I'm slowly digesting it because it's 20 minutes long. And, you know what married life is like. You're lucky to get 20 minutes on your own as soon as you're married. But anyway, can't wait for weekend's boxing action. Mr. Pro Beez, how are you? I hope you are well.
I think I've got to mention the 50 quid that I owe you after that tremendous supportive comment. But we can square it up later. Let's get to Christmas, man. I'm in a giving mood at the moment.
Well, actually, the main question that I need to ask you is, how's the Christmas shopping getting on? How are you doing with that?
I am 3/4 done. I don't like stress. I like to plan ahead. So it's almost done. And, I can relax because I know it's going to be absolute carnage. I mean, yesterday out on the roads was carnage, mate. So just going to try and chill my way through. What about yourself?
We've done really well. We've done really well. Mrs. Benji Boxing is well ahead of the game. I mean, we had our Christmas turkey booked and ordered last month, I think it was. But she's made a couple of trips over to Birmingham into the city centre and that. But she was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She got up, did her morning exercise, and then was down at the shops by about 8 o'clock, or probably earlier than that. But she's got a head switched on like you. She don't want the crowd. She doesn't want to be mixing with all that heavy traffic and stuff. But yeah, crazy times. You've got to get ahead of the game.
100%. All right. Okay. So Gary Shaw has just entered the building. Gary, welcome, Gasser. All right.
I swear that's someone who used to watch my channel back in the day. I hope it's the same person. Otherwise, I've just made a complete ass of myself. But there you go.
Gary, can you confirm that? Were you a subscriber to Benji's Boxing? Let us know.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
All right. So Gary's saying, first and foremost, why is Billy fighting Martin Murray? A bit of a drop from Canelo.
Yeah.
COVID, limited opponents, short time to get ready.
Yeah. Everything you just said. Yeah. I mean, and it's staying active as well, because let's face it, Billy Joe Saunders, when you look over his career, especially over the last few years, he is not the most active boxer at all. You just have to go on a box rec. 2 fights in 2014, 2 fights in 2015, 1 in 2016, 2 in 2017, 1 in 2018, 2 in 2019. That for a guy his age and where he is with his career, that's not massively active. And when you look at the fights that he's been involved in, these weren't particularly career-shortening fights. Most of these opponents that he boxed, obviously, like the David Lemieux performance is almost legendary now. He didn't take much punishment, really. And this is a credit to the guy, because as you've said in the past, he's almost impossible to get hit when he's at his best. He doesn't take much punishment in his fights. He has, these long periods of inactivity. He's a fresh guy, and what's always sort of frustrated me and probably many other people, when you see a guy that's taken very little punishment, has got undisputedly a huge amount of talent in the ring. You just wish he was that little bit more active, maybe 3, 4, 5 fights a year, and really pushing to put pressure on promoters and on champions to get these bigger fights made. Martin Murray, I don't want to say anything bad about the guy, because he's a warrior. Let's face it. He's had a long career. He's fought a lot of big names in there. Personally, for me though, when he boxed Rosario, when was that? It was a few years back now. Seems like an age ago. You know, Gabriel Rosado was 2017. I thought back then. I mean, you could go back to 2016 when he got beat by George Groves, but around that time, 2016, 2017, I was looking at Martin Murray and I was just saying, you know, I think he lost a little bit of speed. I think he'd lost a little bit of maybe everything in his game, and he's coming off his peak and that. And I was thinking, you know, maybe it's time to sort of not think about other things, you know. But yet here we are, 2020. He's still boxing. He's going to go and he's going to give it all. He's going to give it everything. But I just feel that Billy Joe Saunders is just that little bit too fresh, that little bit too good. This fight probably should have happened years ago rather than it's happening now. It's not the greatest matchup, but as we said, people have got to stay busy in these times. People have got to earn money, and let's just be grateful there's boxing on TV.
100%, and that's getting us through difficult times this year. I'd like to announce that obviously, look, the lockdown is over. Guys, enjoy your Christmas, first and foremost. Got some tremendous fights ahead of us this weekend and next weekend. And we'd like to thank the viewers for flooding in now. So we'll get straight to the questions. We'll cut straight to the chase, you know. All right, Joe DC, welcome, mate. Unless BJS is in a big fight, it's hard to get excited about him, to be honest. Well, look, I would say that about any fighter, to be honest. You know, we all want to see the biggest fights possible. And when they're fighting guys where they're just tune-ups or guys that are mandatory defenses, it's not always, you know, going to float your boat. But these fights lead to bigger things. And I think it's a get-ready fight for much more. And let's face it, a lot of these big fighters, these marquee fighters, these world champions, they want to fight in front of crowds. And that looks like it's going to happen next year. So keep the faith, keep the faith. Let's just write this year off and say, okay, January, with good faith, it's going to be better. We're going to have big, big fights. Imagine packed out arenas once more. Sweet Caroline. Imagine that. Sweet Caroline. Yeah. Imagine that. I miss it, man. I miss it. So look towards next year. This is a tune-up fight, and it's really keeping us entertained at home whilst there's not much to do, to be fair. So welcome, viewers. We'll get straight into the question. All right, MTK Live, Horizontal HD. How's it, Pep? How's it going, Pep? All right, big up MTK Live, my guy, regular viewer. All right, so Joe DC, of all the fights this weekend, I'm thinking Yarde versus Arthur could be the standout fight potentially. Benji, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's a good fight. It's a great matchup. Anthony Yarde, you could say, still he's kind of rebuilding his career. Well, I don't necessarily like rebuilding. Not it's like, okay, he lost to Sergey Kovalev, you know, world class fighter. But you know, when you take a loss, especially if you get stopped, it is a good idea to sort of get a couple of wins under the belt, get back to winning ways, make sure the confidence hasn't been dented. And he's kind of done that in his last two fights, had 2 TKO wins. Lyndon Arthur is a very interesting opponent because 17-0. I haven't seen as much of him because he's been working his way up through the ranks. So he's not as well known in terms of name as Anthony Yarde. But I thought he had a good show against Spellman. That's a common opponent for both of them. I like the way that Lyndon throws his shots. Fast, snappy jab. Also moves well. Also, I think he can box on the back foot, which could be pivotal for this fight because I'm not convinced that Anthony Yarde can box on the back foot. And that's maybe where he came up a little bit short with Kovalev. So you're going to have Yarde coming forward. You're going to have Arthur, who's possibly going to look to use slightly better hand speed, use the footwork to try and create angles, look for those counter punches. So it could be a very, very nice mix of styles. And I think it's going to be a good fight, that one. And the winner then can look to move on. Maybe if Yarde gets the win, they'll look to push him on for another sort of title challenge. Lyndon Arthur, if he was to lose, well, he'd be losing to Anthony Yarde. That's not too bad. 17-0, he can come back from that. However, if Arthur wins, it's using Yarde as a springboard that propels him onto other things. And of course, the WBO title at the moment is currently vacant. So, and we all know Frank Warren does love the WBO title. So a lot at stake here, but a very nice mix of styles. Should be a very good fight.
We got to commend both fights for taking the fight, you know.
Yeah.
There's risk either side. I've got to say that.
Massively. Yeah.
Look, we know Lyndon Arthur, you know, technically is quite profound. He moves around the ring quite well. You know, he puts his shots together quite well. We know Anthony Yarde has got the X factor, has got the dynamite in the right hand, and that is an equalizer in any fight. So when you see these two elements collide, it makes it interesting. It also raises questions. I must admit, as we do these streams week after week, I always have questions to ask about the possibilities of the outcomes between the fights, because some of them we matched quite well. You know, to Bar Joyce, really, I really couldn't call that fight. You know, and as it sort of materialized, an eye injury kind of settled, you know, all the proceedings. But this is what we like: great domestic dust-ups, and that's what it is. And shout out to both guys, both good guys. And I was saying to Craig Richards the other day, these good guys are having to fight each other now. You know, it's not personal, it's business. But when you like both guys, it's pretty hard to see a loser. But hey, you know. All right, so guys, smash that like button, get your questions in. Benji in the building, Pro Beezy, Pep Talk UK. It's a party once more. The big gang is out in full effect. Benji, I think you got more length.
It's not often I hear that.
Wow. What's that guy that used to be in what's that? Flash Gordon.
Ming.
Ming. Yeah.
Well, you know, Ming, he had quite a harem of women. So I wouldn't mind. He was living the life. He was living the life before Flash came along and messed everything up for him.
Oh, mate. All right. Okay. So MTK Live Horizontal HD says, can you ask Benji who comes out on top? Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, or Gervonta Davis? Who comes out on top, Benji?
You're mixing up the weight classes there a little bit, ain't you? Interesting. I mean, Gervonta Davis, I've become a believer of him because I was a bit of a Davis skeptic, because I thought, okay, he had a hell of a lot of power, but I did wonder about his temperament because I've seen him almost throw a wobbler in the corner a couple of times. And I always said to myself, well, look, if his temperament isn't right, if he comes up against someone like Lomachenko, who is just known for frustrating people. I mean, look at what happened with Nicholas Walters in their fight. I always thought that maybe Gervonta Davis, if things aren't going his way in the fight, if he's against someone that he can't hit, and he's getting peppered by shots, maybe he'll throw the gloves off and go back to the dressing room. I don't really hold those opinions of Davis anymore. I think he's a bit more focused and a bit more switched on. The other thing with him as well is to go from what I know. I mean, I could be wrong. From what I know of his background, he he's not from wealth, but to then be in the Mayweather camp where you're then surrounded by Lamborghinis and loads of money and that Vegas lifestyle, at such a young age, I wondered if that would take the hunger out of him a little bit, because it's hard. I think it's hard to be hungry, you know, if you're going from poverty to then being Floyd Mayweather's best mate. You know what I'm saying? But I think, again, I have to reassess those opinions of him. That win over Santa Cruz, fantastic knockout. I mean, it's not even debatable. So I've definitely become a bit of more of a Gervonta Davis believer. Teofimo Lopez, I mean, what can you say about his rise has been astronomically fast, and then to be beating Lomachenko, how can you not be excited about the guy? Ryan Garcia, Garcia and Devin Haney are a little bit more. They're a little bit more. Let's see how things develop with them, but they're definitely worth being excited about. Ryan Garcia, I still have a couple of question marks, maybe, whereas I think there's less question marks surrounding Lopez and Davis. So who comes out on top? Maybe I'm leaning maybe towards Lopez at the moment, just because I think that Lomachenko win is
got a signature win.
So, it's so impressive. But Lopez versus Davis would be fantastic.
It's interesting that they all kind of bring different abilities to the table. You know, Teofimo Lopez, for me, he's got high ring IQ.
Yeah,
he carries power, and also as well, he's got speed. Ryan Garcia, speed, and speed kills, they say. Gervonta Davis, power, real knockout power. That equalizer, it's there. Devin Haney, boxing skills.
Calling Gervonta Davis Tank now makes a lot of sense. Now makes a hell of a lot of sense.
After that knockout against Leo Santa Cruz, you understand why they call him Tank. You know. All right, guys, smash that like button. Benji, Pro Beez in the building. Like to welcome all the viewers for stepping in. All right, lead the ball, guy. Big follow on Twitter. Hey, Lee, pick yourself up, mate. Hopefully you'll have a great Christmas. Okay, so next question, slightly outside of the topic today, but we'll answer it anyway. Nice mix domestically at 175. Shaq and Pitters, Craig Richards, who are fighting each other. Next, also Dan Aziz, plenty of good fighters that could be made. Potentially, great domestic dust-ups. And that's another one. Shaq and Pitters, Craig Richards, your side, the Midlands, against my side, down the south.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so ironic, isn't it? Yeah, we're from different parts of the country, and then these two fighters represent where we're from.
Well, So you're on the Craig Richards side. Of course, I'm going to be on the side of Big Shaq. I mean, if we can get a watch party going for that might be a laugh, mightn't it?
December the 18th or something like that? I think it is.
Like that. Yeah, that's the fight that got delayed because Shaq had an injury, didn't he? Was it injury or he had an issue?
Yes,
anyway.
I think a nose injury or something like that. I think it was.
Yeah. I might send you a message after this.
Yeah, we'll sort something up for that. Great fight, though. Great fight.
Yeah, great fight. Sorry, got sidetracked a little bit. But yeah, that fight was meant to happen about a month or so ago, I believe. And then, Shaq had some sort of injury or problem, and rescheduled. So it's good that it's happening this side of Christmas, and that Shaq isn't got too many problems.
Both good guys again. I like both guys, and it's going to be hard to watch, you know, and it's going to be hard to see a loser, basically, you know. I have to sit on the fence, but again, great fight.
But both I like the way the trend is changing, and we have people like Dubois to thank for this, because now I think the trend is changing that promoters are going, well, hold on a second, these domestic dust-ups, especially when they're good fights, like Eggington and Cheeseman, for example, domestic dust-up, good, evenly matched fight. They're getting people talking. And so if promoters and boxers are like, well, these domestic clashes, they get people talking, and the loser isn't, isn't being cast away to the wayside, isn't having their career ended. Hopefully this is a trend that was a trend change that we're seeing in boxing for the better, that we're going to see more of these domestic clashes and we're going to see 50-50 fights. That's all we want. If the powers that be, the promoters, the managers, can understand that this is what the people want. We want domestic clashes. We want 50-50 fights. That's what's going to make you money. Then we're much more likely to see these happen. It's a nice trend change.
100%. And I'd just like to reaffirm what Eddie Hearn said before about Egerton and Cheeseman. The egg and the cheese, it's an omelette.
We need a rematch. We need a rematch of that fight. I thought that fight was absolutely brilliant. And of course, Eggington is going to be back in action next week after, with Ashley Theophane.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I need to get Ashley Theophane on the show. Yeah.
Live on Channel 5 as well. So, if you're like me and you ain't got your Sky Sports subscriptions and BT Sports subscriptions, it's a great one. So there you go. John Pegg needs to give me a little bit of money for advertising that event too now.
All right, guys, we're talking about the fights this weekend. Billy Joe Saunders, Martin Murray, Errol Spence Jr., Danny Garcia. Will it be the same Errol Spence Jr. before the car accident? Will he show that he's still got it? And then also, we're talking about Anthony Yarde versus Lyndon Arthur. London versus Manny. Wow. Great fights to just keep coming. Get your questions in. Smash that like button. All right, I've got a question here for you, Benji. Chris Colbert is a good prospect, but is going under the radar at the moment. Do you know much about him?
I don't. There you go. So look, Nathan, you're right. If he is a good prospect, he's under my radar, and I have to be completely honest because I don't like to try and bullshit my way out of things. But that's someone. Yeah, that's someone that I'm going to have to look up and put in the notes to keep my eye out for. But to be honest, Nathan, if boxers are going under the radar, when people like you come onto streams like this and start shouting names out, and that's what these boxers need. This is exactly what gets their name out.
100%, exactly. Right, and just because of that, I'm gonna, have a look. I'm gonna have a look online and check Chris out. So all the best to Chris Colbert. Hope he does really well in his career. All right, Nathan, what do you think of Lerone Richards? What do you think of his potential?
It's another name that I'm not that familiar with, to be honest. So maybe you want to take this one.
Yeah, Lerone Richards, British and Commonwealth super middleweight champion before he vacated. Good fighter. He's more of a boxer. I mean, he hasn't been in the big massive fights yet. Who did he beat? He beat the guy from Manchester. What was his name again? The name's gone beside me, but really impressive win that night. And also what I would say about Lerone Richards is Dave Caldwell really rates him highly, and he's fussy with who he trains. So that's a very positive statement about Lerone Richards. And now with Matchroom also, we're going to see him exposed to bigger audience right now. So I think there's a lot more to come from Lerone Richards at super middleweight. He was meant to fight Umar Sadiq, but that didn't happen. So
he beat Tommy Langford last year. So
that's it.
I think I may have seen him box actually. It's just one of these names that's escaped me, but I'm fairly sure I may have seen his fight with Tommy Langford last year.
Yeah, he's a slick star. Like I said, man, I think I'm hearing so many good things about the potential of Lerone Richards. So we're going to see more of him. He's also fighting on the bill tonight. So look out for Lerone Richards tonight as he makes his Matchroom debut. Yeah,
definitely will.
Okay, so we're going to kind of stick to the fights this weekend, guys. Get the questions in. Okay, BJS on points, Spence points win, I think. Okay, so Billy Joe Saunders against Martin Murray. Points is not a bad shout because if you look at Billy's style, his style is to hit and not get hit. And also as well, he moves around the ring pretty well. So with that in mind, I don't think that's a bad shout, Benji.
No, I don't think so at all. I think that's kind of a very sensible prediction. I think actually that Billy Joe Saunders might get a stoppage here just because of his movement being so good, and I think it could be a case of an accumulation of accurate punching mixed with Martin Murray not being as sprightly as he once was. I feel a bit bad saying it, but I think that Martin Murray could get stopped here, and by that I don't necessarily mean it'll be a spectacular knockout, but I think there's a chance that if Billy Joe Saunders is having his way, that Martin Murray may need to be stopped. The ref might step in if he's getting hit cleanly too many times in the later rounds.
Well, what I would say is he's got Mark Tibbs in his corner, and Mark Tibbs, very, very good trainer, and he's going to encourage Billy Joe to box behind the jab and set things up and also move around. And he's had him in camp now for quite a while. So we're going to see a Billy Joe that's fully attuned to be in front of a good audience.
That's going to be an interesting one, because I thought that, when Billy Joe was in the Ingle camp, I thought that was a good match, because
100.
Ingle camp is known for developing boxers with awkward styles and really nurturing that. And I was a little bit disappointed maybe when Billy sort of moved away. But again, Billy Joe Saunders, he's had a lot of coach changes, and again, that's another thing that you don't see. Okay, boxers change coaches, but not necessarily with the regularity that we've seen Billy Joe change his camps and move about the place. So he's a bit of an enigma. I can't work out Billy Joe at all. I think it's probably best to try not.
Shout out Billy Joe, man. I like Billy Joe. As I said about Billy Joe, been watching him for a long time, and I know how good he is. And for me, he's probably better at middleweight than super middleweight. But I guess he knows how he feels making the weight and how he feels stronger, whatever. But he's an amazing fighter. He's an amazing fighter, and he's definitely of world level credentials. You can't dispute that. Again, I think there's some big fights that should be ahead for him in the future, where he gets to showcase exactly what he's about. So, great fighter, Billy Joe. But I think in this fight against Martin Murray, the critics are going to be out. If we don't see a top display, they'll be out. You know what the boxing community can be like. They'll be hammering Billy Joe. So he's under a bit of pressure to put on a very good performance this time.
Again, this is another reason. It's another thing you have to feel a little bit sorry for Martin Murray for, really, because if Martin Murray, and I'd love to see it, a rejuvenated Martin Murray comes in, boxes 12 really hard rounds, really puts it on Billy Joe Saunders, puts him under pressure. Martin Murray isn't necessarily going to get the kudos for that. It's not going to be, wasn't Martin Murray great? It's going to be, Billy Joe Saunders is not, Billy Joe Saunders is going to take the heat. Martin Murray ain't going to get the pats on the back. And that's not right. But that's what's going to happen if that were to play out.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. MTK Live horizontal once more. Can you ask Benji, does he think a brilliant boxing display from Billy Joe Saunders won't do him any favors like the Lemieux fight? Good question, because maybe that is a reason. Okay, everyone's out here blaming Billy Joe, but when they see the ability and what he did to Lemieux, I mean, we all remember that. We all remember that. It might put people off, you know, fighting him?
Well, look, I've seen Billy Joe Saunders box live. Which fight was it again? It was Southpaw, American Southpaw before the Lemieux fight. So it's only 11 o'clock in the morning. I've still not got myself together. It was Willie Monroe Jr. Of course, it was.
Yes, Willie Monroe. Yeah,
both Dubois and Yarde were on the undercard of that as well. So that was at the Copper Box Arena, which is a great place to go and watch boxing. It's not the biggest place in the world. Now, Billy Joe Saunders was the main event that night. It was not a sold-out arena. It was not massively full. In fact, when Billy Joe Saunders was in the ring, you could pick a seat. Basically, there was plenty of seats free that you could go and sit in a much more expensive seat than the one you actually bought. Now, what the point of this is when you're looking at Billy Joe Saunders, awkward style, very, very good boxer, going to give you shed loads of problems, but he's not a massive, massive ticket seller. So what is he bringing to the table in negotiations when Eddie Hearn sits down and says, right, I'm trying to make this big fight for Billy Joe Saunders. What's he bringing to the table? He's bringing to the table an awkward style, lots of movement, great boxing skills, but he's not bringing a huge amount of ticket revenue. The risk reward there. If Billy Joe Saunders had a following like Ricky Hatton used to, or Joe Calzaghe, making these fights would be a lot more possible to do because you're bringing so much more leverage to the table. If you could, I mean, Frank Warren setting up a fight for Ricky Hatton in Vegas, he could say, well, look, we make this fight, 40,000 Brits are going to come over and spend money in the hotels and in the casinos. You know, we're going to sell out. We can boost up the ticket price because the ticket's going to be like gold dust because of all these Brits are going to want them. You've got all that leverage. So promoters, managers, boxers are much more likely to take the risk. But with Billy Joe Saunders, what he brings to the table is massive skills, nightmare skills. But when you're bringing those skills to the table, you need to say, well, look, take the fight because we're going to bring all this revenue there as well. Am I making sense or am I just waffling on?
No, I get you. I mean, some might point to the fact that Dave Allen, you know, is a good ticket seller, but he hasn't had the accolades in the game that Billy Joe's had. Ryan Garcia, you know, a lot has been made about Ryan Garcia when he hasn't really had those signature fights yet. But he's got a massive Instagram following, and then social media overall. So I get it. There's more to things than just in the ring. It's outside the ring also as well.
I mean, Conor McGregor gets the Mayweather fight. Would any other UFC fighter calling out Mayweather get that fight? It's debatable. But as soon as you look at how big a name Conor McGregor is, Mayweather's going to say straight away, yeah, I'm having that because it's $100 million payday. You know, he's not going to get $100 million payday off a lesser known UFC fighter. And in fact, it could be more risky with a lesser known UFC fighter. So again, it's not just about skills. It's not just about resume. It's not just about working your way up there. This is the fight game that's also the entertainment game. Bums on seats, pay-per-view sales, they go a long, long way to making fights happen. Yeah,
and we could also say another comparison is Terence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao. Crawford, pound for pound, #1, but Manny Pacquiao is revered like in the world. Everyone knows who Manny Pacquiao is, and he's got a tremendous following. And, you know, anyone he fights is going to have a good payday based upon the audience that he's going to expose the other fighter to. So
absolutely.
Simple. All right, guys, smash that like button. Get your questions in. Billy Joe against Martin Murray this weekend. Errol Spence Jr. takes on Danny Garcia. Let's get some questions in about Errol Spence Jr. now.
Oh, sorry, mate. One's just coming. A good question is coming from MTK Live. It says, "Can you ask Benji? Does he think being with Matchroom has improved the chance of the Canelo fight?" What do you think? What do you think?
I think with Canelo, he's so big that he ultimately calls the shots. It doesn't matter who the promoter is. He does what he wants. He's been in the game since he's 15, 16, and he's been in there with the best of guys, including Mayweather, and he's kind of picked that up from Mayweather, you know, that he can kind of call the shots how he wants, basically. So I don't think it makes a difference. I think Canelo fights who he wants.
Yeah, but I would say that if Billy Joe thought he had the same chance of getting the fight with Frank Warren that he does with Eddie Hearn, he wouldn't have moved. The fact that he has moved says to me that he believes that he has a better chance of those bigger fights under the Matchroom wing, if that makes sense. So I think the actions of the boxer kind of speak volumes there. And you could, I mean, with Carl Frampton moving camps, moving stables, he must have believed that his career was going to go in a better direction with Queensberry rather than with Matchroom. So we just have to wait and see, though, really, don't we? How things play out.
100%. Errol Spence Jr. against Danny Garcia. Tough fight for him to take on the back of that car accident. Straight into a tough fight. How do you think that's going to go?
I'm a massive fan of Errol Spence Jr. I love the way he boxes. He's in my probably top 5 pound for pound list. I remember when he fought Cal Brook, you know, as I always talk about my brother on these chats and how he's sort of kind of more of a casual fan. And I had it all set up on the TV ready to go, and he comes and he goes, "So is this Spence any good then?" I went, "Oh yeah." He said, "Oh, so you don't think Kel's just going to knock him out in 4 rounds?" I said, "Oh no." I said, "This is going to be a really hard fight for Cal Brook." I said, "This is going to be a very close fight. I hope Cal wins." But I said, this is going to be edge of your seat stuff. And it really was. And I think there were a lot of people like my brother that, you know, they heard the Cal Brook name. They hadn't heard the name Errol Spence, didn't really know what he was bringing to the table. But they found out that night. And I have to say, Danny Garcia, when he knocked out Amir Khan, which feels like it was decades ago, it was a case of, he's got a strong left hook and he's caught Khan, who, you know, a lot of people question his chin. He's just a big left hook. But I think since that fight, he has developed really, really well. And by the time he got in with Keith Thurman, that was a very close fight. Obviously, the Garcia camp felt they'd won that. There was quite a fallout. They were not happy after that fight at all. But what he brought to the table there showed massive improvements in his hand speed, his footwork, his punch variety, his jab seemed to be a hell of a lot better. Obviously, Sean Porter fight that he had, he came up short there. I thought he got outworked, out-hustled by Sean Porter in that fight. I don't think Garcia used the movement angle and angles that he could have done because obviously Sean Porter, everyone should know that he's going to come forward and press you all night long. So you've got to be able to step off to the side, create angle, and throw that counter shot. So there's a lot of question marks there of where Spence is. Has that car crash had long-lasting effects on his physical abilities? I really hope not. Really, really hope not. I do fancy Spence to win this one. I would not write off Danny Garcia, though, because he does have power. He does have skills. But when you look at where each man is in the various departments, I think that on his day, Spence has got the better footwork. I think he's got the the better variety. Power, I might lean slightly to Garcia on the power side of things, and it's always good to have an equalizer. But hopefully Spence is back to his best, and I think a Spence points win is probably where my head's at the moment.
Points. With Danny Garcia, are we seeing a similar thing with Deontay Wilder? You know, he's got that big punch. His one's the left hook. Deontay's is the right hand. And as soon as people kind of figured it out, he kind of regressed in terms of his career. Is it a similar thing with Danny Garcia? He has got a tremendous left hook, but people know what's kind of coming.
I think you've got a point. I think you've got a very valid point. But where I'd say that Garcia is slightly different to Deontay Wilder, I think Garcia is a bit more aware that he's been worked out for that punch. And I do think he has developed other sides of his game. As I say, I think his footwork and his jab have improved a lot since that Amir Khan fight. Whereas I don't think Deontay Wilder, and we've had this conversation before, I don't think Deontay Wilder is as open to change and developing the weaker sides of his game as Garcia has been.
Mainly because of Angel Garcia's father.
Possibly. I mean, I'm not a big fan, to be totally honest. And I do wonder if Garcia was with a different trainer, would things be different? But you know, Angel Garcia, his son is a thoroughbred racehorse, and it's kind of like when you've got a thoroughbred racehorse, it's kind of hard to get things wrong in a way. But when the chips are down, and I think when you need a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, I'm not sure that Angel Garcia is the man to have in the corner, because he's a very kind of emotional guy. I think, you know, when you look at father-son coaches like Enzo Calzaghe, I think Enzo Calzaghe, from my point of view, when watching him in the ring, he didn't, apart from the odd little moment here and there, he didn't look like Joe's father in the ring when business was on. He was more like his coach. And it was same a bit in press conferences. I think he was very good at switching between dad mode and coach mode. And I think that's really needed. And I think it's a phenomenally difficult thing to do. Angel Garcia is in dad mode 100% of the time, all the time. You know, and I think that's could be a hindrance.
All right, it's interesting. Like I said, I'm interested to see how Errol Spence Jr. how he's recovered from this accident and what he kind of does against Danny Garcia. I must say, in the fight against Mikey Garcia, he was getting tons of stick that he should have put away a smaller fighter, you know, at the time. Tons of stick.
When that fight was announced, I was like, oh, this isn't good. This isn't. There's too much disparity there. But what really hit it home was when they had their first face-to-face. They had a press conference and then were face-to-face, and there was about a foot difference. And when you're in that situation, there's no way you're going to look good, because if you get rid of the guy in 4 rounds, well, you've just beaten up a little guy. If it goes more than 4 rounds, then people are saying, well, why haven't you beaten up this little? There was never going to be a good outcome for that fight. I do think it was a mistake. But
it sold lots of tickets that day.
Well, this is it, yeah. But again, we go back to what we were just talking about. If you bring in lots of ticket sales and money to the table, you get you get much more pick of the fights of who you're going in against.
All right, TT 101. Garcia's father's like Eubank Senior. Would you agree with that? Charismatic, big personalities in the corner. Well, Eubank Senior's not in the corner for Eubank Junior anymore, but when he was, is there a similarity?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get the words out again. You know, it's 25 past 11 in the morning. I'm still not together. But I think there's an element of living life through the sun, and Eubanks Senior has kind of already lived that life. He's lived the boxing life. He's had his success, but through Junior, he gets it again in a way. But I can obviously, Senior is well aware of sharks in the game. He's well aware of mistakes that he may have made financially or otherwise, and he doesn't want to see his son make those same mistakes. So I understand that, but still, when you're in the corner and you're posturing and sort of looking at the crowd, going, "Well, look at me, look at my son, look at what I've produced." You know, it's not the best. I mean, Angel Garcia is slightly different in that he's not sort of posturing in the corner the way that Senior did. But when it comes to press conferences and things, the sheer emotion that comes out of Angel Garcia. So, I mean, there's similarities, but the way they go around expressing their love for their child, well, you shouldn't really call these boxers children, but the way they express themselves is sort of kind of different, because like Angel Garcia is the sort of guy that will throw tables and things about the place and get worked up that way. Whereas I can't really imagine Eubanks Senior doing that. But then again, I can't imagine Angel Garcia standing in the corner mid rounds, 3 foot away from his son, sort of posturing, you know.
Do you think
same? Sorry, mate.
Do you think with Eubanks Senior, the idea was when Eubanks Junior started was just to build up his notoriety first before leaving the corner? You know, get people to obviously associate his son with him, build the name, continue to get the name out there for his son, and then eventually let the son just do his own thing, which he's doing now with Roy Jones Jr. now going to be in his corner.
Possibly, but yeah, you can't. I don't think you can write off that hypothesis. But at the same time, what Senior has showed us throughout his whole time being in the public eye, it's hard to kind of not see him as a bit of a narcissist. So if with those narcissistic tendencies, you kind of think it's a bit more, it's kind of easy to be a bit more cynical about the whole thing, you know?
All right, guys, smash that like button. Get your questions in. MTK Live, he's flying a flag for the questions this morning. All right, can I ask Benji, since the Errol Spence terrible car crash, does he think this could have made Spence chinny? Surely the knockout from the crash is unlikely. It's more unlike any human punch, KO.
Has
it affected his chin resistance? We'll soon find out, won't we?
It's impossible to know yet, but again, I suppose it's something to think about. If there was a severe head trauma, well, look, if there was a severe head trauma in that crash, there's a good chance that he wouldn't get licensed. The fact is that he'll have passed medicals and he'll have got a boxing license. Says to me that, well, I hope that everything is all right up there and there's no underlying issues. But at the same time, a car crash is a car crash, and you can't sort of understate that, can you?
The fact that he was drink driving before the crash, is that an indication of Errol Spence Jr. not necessarily living the lifestyle that a world champion should do?
It's not good at all. And, you know, living the life and having the boxer's lifestyle is one thing from a training and physical point of view, but a high profile athlete in a drink driving incident, it's a PR disaster. I mean, John Bones Jones from the UFC, with all his sort of offences and misdemeanors and things, it's kind of very hard to like the guy. now, despite him having obviously insane skills. So I think Errol Spence has made some very, very bad decisions. And I mean, it could be all. If that decision to drink and then get in the car and drive, and then he's had a crash, if that's now curtailed his career because his boxing is now nowhere near as what it was, that ultimately that decision could have just completely ruined his career from every aspect. You know, because let's face it, if he'd had a crash because of someone else drink driving crashed into him, people are much more likely to get behind him and want to see him succeed. You know, see the big comeback and all sort of things like that. For public opinion, for me personally, anyway, it's even though I like, you know, I've just sort of told you how much I like Errol Spence's style of boxing, and I think he's an incredible talent. I find it difficult to get behind a drink driver.
You just called it as it is. What I would say is, on another note, is people do make mistakes in life, and it's how you learn from them and how you come back and how you put the positive message out there to not make your mistakes.
Yeah.
So maybe that was the turning point in his life.
I agree, and I hope so. I absolutely hope so. But I think that Mr. Beez, spot on. This is why I like you. Always got that
the other side
perspective. Well, the thing is, very few issues in life. As I've got a bit older and realised, very few issues in life are just straight black and white. There's always the grey area is always much bigger, and I think, you know, as human beings living in 2020, at this point in humanity, I think we need to accept that there is nuance, and things need to be examined in a thoughtful and rational way. And Mr. Beez, you are more than capable of doing that, as you have proved.
When you're sitting on the fence, you can see things from all sides and perspectives. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a question from Nathan. All right, Nathan, hope you're well, mate. Wouldn't mind seeing Eubank Jr. fight Ryder, otherwise Murata. The Ryder fight.
That'd be great. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
I feel like Ryder does deserve another big fight because the performance against Callum Smith was a top performance. You know, many would say he was unlucky that night.
Yeah.
So he should really be put in line for another big payday, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. Maybe John Ryder could even consider a move up, because then, you know, the winner or loser of this fight at the weekend between Yarde and Arthur, why not? They're
at light heavy. They're at light heavy. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he moved up, because he's super middle, right? So if he wanted to move up to light heavy to make a big domestic fight, because you know, Ryder versus Yarde would be, for as long as it lasted, might be quite entertaining, because you've got two people come forward and like to throw big punches. So there's lots of domestic sort of stuff out there for Ryder. But yeah, the thought of him at super middle with Eubank Jr., I think that'd be a cracking fight, just because of the mix of styles. I think that'd be brilliant.
He's dangerous. The problem with John Ryder is we're seeing in the sport, these guys with high risk, small reward, they're stuck in a hard place. And that performance that he did against Callum Smith showed what a good fighter he is. And many are not going to want to fight him now because of that. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
All right, Luke Beresford, shout out from Derby. Thanks for all the content. You really helped me through my daily struggles. So thanks, mate. Christmas is coming up, mate. Right? Santa's going to come down from the chimney and he's going to give us all presents. Right? Lockdown is over. Benji and Pro on the live. Hey, many good things to look forward to. It's the weekend, baby. Let's go. Let's go, Luke. Let's go.
Luke, whatever your daily struggles are, my friend, just stay tough, stay strong. It'll get better. It'll get better, my friend.
And what was that song? Things can only get better. Is it D-Ream?
D-Ream, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I won't do a rendition. I'll just say what the song was. All right. So look, we've got Billy Joe Saunders fighting Martin Murray this weekend. Errol Spence Jr., Danny Garcia, and Anthony Yarde versus Lyndon Arthur. So Anthony Yarde, look, basically almost got Kovalev out of there. All right.
Round 8.
Now he's fighting Lyndon Arthur. Okay, so I think some people would say that Anthony Yarde basically before the Kovalev fight maybe should have had some more domestic fights, with more strong domestic fighters before fighting Kovalev. Is that something that you kind of would agree with? Should he have got more experience domestically first? Because we do have a whole good range of British fighters before taking on like a Kovalev.
I think he could have had one or two more fights. Whether it's domestically, not too sure. I think that Yarde went from a certain level and then went to the highest level, and he missed out a couple of levels in between. And maybe he should have looked at seeing what was about on the European circuit and seeing if there was anything there that could sort of bridge this gap. So I think that maybe Anthony Yarde, because he just was like on a demolition streak where he was just knocking guys out, and he hadn't really been put in sort of any sort of dogfights, or he didn't seem to have to revert to a plan B or change tactics because someone was asking questions of him. And I think he needed to be in a couple of fights like that before Kovalev. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Anthony Yarde. He was sort of boxing at a level where he was just going through guys and then jumped up a lot. I think they could have brought him through the levels a little bit more. But again, then you start saying, well, give us details, what sort of names you're looking at. And it's a hard one to judge, because you can pull over, you grab a European light heavyweight and you say, well, this will be a test. And then what happens if Yarde just goes straight through him? It's a very difficult one. I think matchmaking and it is a skill, and it takes a hell of a lot of sort of research into opponents to find someone that is, that Yarde ultimately you hope is going to beat, but he's going to have a style to ask questions of him. But at the same time, you don't want some unknown European with a granite chin turning up with a style like Billy Joe Saunders, causing all sorts of problems, because that in itself causes a whole load of problems. So matchmaking and bringing a boxer along from scratch, from domestic level all the way up to world level, and to hit all these little increments along the way, it is a phenomenally difficult thing to do. And it's something that I don't think we necessarily think about and appreciate so much. But I think the lack of those kind of middle level opponents for Anthony Yarde is what really showed up on the night against Kovalev.
But again, right, I know you're going to say, look, you're playing devil's advocate again. Right, when you fight better opposition, right, better competition, you learn more, right? So he could argue and say, okay, I fought Kovalev, I almost got him out there, but I learned a load of things about ring generalship, how to kind of close range with a top class fighter like Kovalev. Whereas if I fought mid-range guys or guys of domestic level, which I could have done, then I'm not learning anything. I put away these guys. And much was made of Daniel Dubois' level of competition before the fight with Joe Joyce. Oh, you should have got him a mid-fight, blah, 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 the matchmaking, etc., etc. It works both ways. It really does.
Well, absolutely. And hindsight is always 20/20. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that Yarde shouldn't have taken that fight, and he should have put that fight off and put it on the back burner until he'd ticked all these boxes, these fictional fantasy boxes. I'm not saying that necessarily at all. What I'm sort of saying is that in a perfect world leading up to world level, this is what you'd kind of want, but we're not in that perfect world. What Yarde needs to do now is, like you say, have that whole Kovalev fight as a learning experience, and we're going to find out this weekend, really, against an undefeated live domestic opponent. We're going to find out how much he has taken from that Kovalev fight, because if he's going to get up to that level again and box at that world level again, he's got to make improvements and adjustments to be able to win at that highest level. Because let's face it, I mean, I don't think he's probably not ever going to fight Kovalev again because of where they both are with their careers and things. I mean, will we ever see Kovalev box again? Because he seems to be, I don't like to say past it, but he doesn't seem to be the same boxer he was in that first fight against Andre Ward. He's not a young guy. Anthony Yarde still has a lot of time on his hands. So I think the best thing for Anthony Yarde is, of course, he wants to get back to world level opposition, but I don't think there's necessarily too much of a rush to do it. Work his way back up, try and hit some of these levels, and implement what he learned from that Kovalev fight.
I mean, it's worth pointing out he didn't have many amateur fights. I think it was maybe 15 or so.
Yeah.
So again, like Dillian Whyte, a lot of these fighters that we do know in the UK, they're still learning as they're fighting. They're facing different styles, different caliber of opponents, and they're learning different things. So, all right, S. Long Beach. All right, West Side. All right, EJ is going to knock out Danny Swift Garcia. Knockout. That will be the statement that will put aside these questions that people are asking about, is he the same since the car accident? And also, we got to bear in mind, Terence Crawford just put out a statement against Kell Brook. So people want to see Spence versus Crawford. And if he knocks out Danny Garcia, which nobody's managed to do, all right, then I'm telling you, that's going to be a big statement at 147.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. That to knock out, not even necessarily knock out, but to stop Danny Garcia. Because again, the way that Spence's style is, fast, accurate shots, the way he puts punches together, he doesn't necessarily have to knock out Danny Garcia. If he's landing cleanly and often, the ref could jump in those later rounds and stop the fight. It would be a hell of a statement. There would be no question marks around long-lasting effects from the car crash after that. Be very interesting to see. It would be very bad for Danny Garcia at this point in his career to be stopped, I have to say, because he's if he's not at his peak now, he's definitely come out of. He's had 36 fights. There's only 2 losses on his record, Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, which are still pretty high-level opponents. So, really, though, if Spence beats him and stops him, you have to question where Danny Garcia is. Because it's that division is stacked. There's you got your Crawford, Garcia, Pacquiao's still about in there. Sean Porter, Amir Khan, is he still relevant? Yeah. But should Danny Garcia lose this and get stopped, people are going to start saying, well, is he in the top 5 of the division? Is he in the top 10 of the division? So could be some issues if Danny Garcia were to lose this in that fashion.
100%. I think it's interesting. Again, questions that could sway either way for either fighter, which is very interesting. That makes me want to get up 5 a.m. in the morning and watch that fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Highland Hero. Guys, thanks for joining. They're starting to come in more. Smash the like button. All right. Main thing is he never got injured in that fight with Kovalev. Talking about Anthony Yarde. I'm pretty gutted about DDD. Bit of a shame. I'm a fan of the Juggernaut, but just a shame about the injury. Nobody wanted that. Great fight, exactly. We want a great fight, but we don't want people to get injured, especially potential career impacting injury. Benji.
This is a great comment from Highland Hero. You know, kudos to you. That is a really good comment because Yarde went and fought Kovalev. He got stopped, but hopefully that fight hasn't had long-lasting damage. Hopefully that fight hasn't curtailed his career. Obviously, when we look at people like Kell Brook, who had a tough fight with Golovkin, you can say, well, after the Golovkin fight, he was never the same boxer. And so he wasn't as good with Spence. And then after Spence, that obviously diminished his career again because of an eye injury. So if Kovalev went up to that, if Yarde went up to that highest level and boxed Kovalev, got a load of experience out of it, okay, got stopped, but it hasn't diminished him in any way, then that would be a massively positive thing to take away. Daniel Dubois, it's not just about the fact that he got stopped that's the worry. The worry is if that fight has caused an injury that's going to be a recurring problem, because it's the retina, which is the Frank Bruno injury. Frank Bruno had detached retina. Once it detached once, he had the same problem again a couple of times, if I remember rightly. If that keeps happening, you've got a young fella in Daniel Dubois whose career could be, well, it could be done. And absolutely right, Highland Hero. Nobody wants that. I mean, the debate over that fight, sort of on Twitter and whatever, and you know, online in the boxing community, the debate surrounding Dubois and quitting and all this sort of thing over the last week has been kind of like a firestorm. And it's been interesting to see the various comments on that. So I don't think we want to go down there again, do we? I don't think we want to dig up that argument again.
Yeah, actually, do you know what? What I saw, and big credit to Umar from IFL, he asked Martin Bowers, right? Only the other day, I saw that interview this morning, where you looking to pull out Dubois. And do you remember we had a live on the Sunday after the fight, and we talked about the corner potentially pulling out Dubois? Should they have done more? Should they have pulled him out earlier? Well, Martin Bowers said, look, we have already said one more round and we're going to pull you out. So they had his interest, you know, at heart. And crucially, they were looking at the young man's career, you know, moving forward, moving past that fight. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, well, bottom line is I hope Daniel Dubois, I hope this isn't going to be a recurring injury for him. Hopefully, you know, he's not diminished in any way after that. And I guess as well, because Yarde's had two or three fights since Kovalev, but they've not been particularly hard necessarily. I think with a live opponent this weekend, we're going to see, you know, if there is any hangover from that. And again, hopefully not. If from Yarde's point of view, if he's gone up to world level, boxed Kovalev, got a load of data from it, got a load of learning from it, and hasn't sustained anything that's diminished him, it's all good, really. You can only see that as positives.
No, definitely, and we got to give credit to Lyndon Arthur as well. Very good guy. This guy can really, really box. And people are saying, well, he's just a boxer. No, I've seen the man in the gym. There is power there, mate. Right. There is power. He just chooses to box. So it's going to be a cracking fight. And as Frank Warren says, it's a great fight. It's a great fight. Big up Frank Warren. All right, guys, get your questions in. How long you got, Benji? 10 minutes?
Yeah, we can do another 10 minutes.
Yeah, we'll do another 10 minutes or so. All right. Chris Ward Music. All right. Maybe he's a CEO of a big record label. Okay. American fight fans are living in the past at the moment. Can't give credit when a British fighter wins. British fighters give credit where it's due regardless. So I think there's an ongoing conversation in the chat. I mean, I haven't seen it maybe amongst American Reviewer and Chris Ward. Okay, Benji, obviously, look, we're a bit biased. Do you think British fighters are discredited by their American counterparts? I mean, we watch a lot of boxing online. Come on.
Yeah.
Like a lot of commentaries. Yeah.
I think the American boxing media is harsher on British boxers, I have to say. That's just the general sort of feeling I get. Where the fans are concerned, I think it's slightly different. Okay, you are going to get partisan fans. I mean, I'll always say that I have a bias. The vast majority, 99% of the time, I am going to back the British boxer, even if they're a heavy underdog, like Callum Smith and Canelo. Callum Smith is the heavy underdog, but he's the British boxer. So when that fight comes on, I am going to be watching it with a bias. I am going to be going, go on, Callum, stick one on him, because I'm going to back the Brit. But I can park those feelings. I'm aware of that. For start, I'm aware of that bias. I'll admit to that bias. And because I'm aware of it and I'm happy to admit it, I can park it. I can park those feelings. And if Canelo puts on a great display of boxing, I can say, well, best man won on the night. Canelo put on a great display of boxing. I think the issue comes is when fans can't park those feelings. And, you know, back in the day when I was a bit younger and I was a huge Ricky Hatton fan, you know, he was my guy sort of thing. And I had very partisan feelings and I couldn't quite put them aside. Because I remember when everyone, you know, Cotto burst onto the scene at 140, you know, obviously there was a huge amount of hype behind him and things like that. And there was a lot of talk about Ricky Hatton versus Cotto. And unfortunately, and it's embarrassing for me to say this, but I'll admit to it, when Cotto was coming through at 140, I probably didn't give him the credit that he necessarily deserved, because I saw him as a threat to the Brit and I was behind the Brit, you know. But, you know, I was young and stupid. We all do and say things when we're young and stupid. But, you know, when you've got grown-up boxing fans, you've got to admit to yourself when you have a bias, and you need to be able to park that bias. So I think generally boxing fans, you know, we do have partisan fans, but there are, on both sides of the pond, there are still plenty of people that can look at things a bit more objectively. Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't think nationality has got anything to do with it. It's the fight that you like. I mean, I was a big Andre Ward fan, you know, because of his technical ability. It's got nothing to do with his nationality. Mike Tyson, big hero coming up. He was a big hero for me. Again, nothing to do with his personality. Sorry, his nationality, of where he's from, or personality, both actually. So it's an argument that's out there, but I think the bottom line is we're proud of our fighters. That's what I think it is.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's what it is basically. So I get it. The Americans are gonna push for their fighters. We're gonna push for our fighters, but we're respectful. We're respectful. That's Absolutely. The main thing.
Yeah.
You know, we respect the noble art, and we respect skills. You got skills, it doesn't matter where you're from.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, most of you are not built for the fight game. All right, this is going to be ongoing. All right, I think we'll move to the next question. But big up, yeah, from Long Beach. We respect the West Side, man. And do you know what? I love America. I've been there several times, so
yeah.
You know, we'll move into the next question. Okay, Anthony Jones. Welcome, mate. Welcome, mate. All right. I can't wait to see EJ versus Garcia. The boys are fight killers at 147. They're so close in talent, like 154. someone got to lose though. You're not trash when you've lost. Could easily swing either way. Yeah, you can't be trash when you've lost. You know, we've seen people take L's and still go on and win world titles and, you know, have great careers. How many times has Pacquiao lost? Is it 8 times? 8 losses? Are you saying Pacquiao is not a great fighter?
Well, this is it, isn't it? Bernard Hopkins lost, what was it, second fight?
There you go.
It happens. These things happen. And again, especially if you're boxing at the highest level, and you could definitely maybe rein me in if I'm going too far, but some people may class Errol Spence and Danny Garcia as like a pound for pound fight. You know, this is the highest level of boxing. It's definitely the highest level of 147. So if you're at the very highest level, you know, arguably 2 top 5 fighters boxing each other, you can't call the loser trash. This is the pinnacle of the sport. This is the pinnacle of the division.
Of course. And these guys, they're stepping up to the plate and making sure that they get themselves in with top class operators. And the other way of looking at it is they can take easy fights, you know, and being guaranteed a victory basically. But when you're at the top of the sport, you know, you take that risk. You can lose. All right, guys, smash that like button. Get your questions in. I think, should we do 15 minutes up to make it 90-minute thing? Yeah? We'll end it on there. Okay, we've got 14 minutes actually on the clock for a 90-minute discussion and live stream with Benji.
It's nearly 12 o'clock, which means I'm nearly awake. Dismiss all the daft stuff. Yeah, dismiss all the daft stuff I've said over the last hour. I'll give you 15 minutes of quality now. I'm awake.
All right. Okay. So Nathan says, do you believe a lot of people are too harsh on fighters taking a loss?
Yes. But I mean, the caveat with that is there's circumstances. Depending on what happened in the ring and who it was. But like I said earlier, like if Martin Murray pulls out the performance of his life and gives Billy Joe Saunders hell and even wins, rather than patting Martin Murray on the back, we're going to be having to go at Billy Joe Saunders for losing the fight. So maybe instead of being harsh on the loser, maybe we need to pat the winner on the back a little bit more.
All right. Question to you. I want to keep my thoughts to myself on this one. Major question. Where is it? Here it is. Would you be willing to take the vaccination? Is the most important question.
Oh, God.
Go on, Benji.
Right. You want me to answer that?
I got my own personal opinions on that, but you know,
my personal opinion is yes, because my dad was a science teacher. My mum was a nurse for a long time and was working in hospitals and has been in medicine for a lot of her career. And yes, I'll be taking the vaccine when it comes out. I am not going to be offered that vaccine for quite a while because I'm not in the danger zone as regard age or any kind of disabilities or anything like that. No one should listen to me. No one should listen to anyone on Twitter or online. If you want to know about whether you should take this vaccine or not, go and see your GP. Go and see your GP. Your GP should be a doctor that you have known and knows your medical history. They are a professional. They've gone through university. They've studied medicine their whole life. They've dedicated their life to medicine. They know a lot more about vaccinations and everything than anyone online, especially some random boxing fan. Okay, so don't listen to me. Me personally, like my mum is in the is at an age now where she's in that danger zone. My best friend is severely disabled and immunocompromised. They are going to get offered the vaccine a lot sooner than me. I believe both will have it. Neither will refuse it. That's their decision. They will be following their medical advice. And again, if you have any questions about vaccines and worried about them in any sort of way, you need to go and speak to your GP. Simple as that.
Beez and Benji. Okay, I think Billy will look awesome tonight against Martin Murray. This is what people are calling for, right? That stellar Billy Joe performance. You know, they're talking about the Lemieux fight all the time, but I think some people want to see that again. Will it happen tonight, do you think?
I think Billy Joe Saunders needs to look awesome tonight. I think he needs to because, you know, we haven't seen him in the ring for a while. I think he needs that big performance. I think he's more than capable of it. And I think he's got an opponent that's going to come forward and he's not going to have to go looking for Martin Murray. So, yeah, why not? I think he can look awesome tonight too.
All right, guys, smash that like button. We've got 9 minutes left. Subscribe if you ain't subscribed. Benji in the building, Pro Beezy, Pep Talk UK. It's a party. Okay, so in the interim, before more questions come up, Billy Joe versus Canelo should have taken place, but for the pandemic. Now, Benji, in your heart of hearts, if that fight did take place, who would have won that fight?
Sorry, you just dropped. Can you just say that again for me, Frank?
Sorry. So basically, Billy Joe should have taken on Canelo.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry.
In the summer, right? Cinco de Mayo. It didn't happen. Who would have won that fight if it did happen?
I'd probably go with Canelo, to be brutally honest. But that's not to say that Billy Joe wouldn't. I believe Billy Joe, with his movement, his speed, in his awkwardness, I believe he'd give Canelo a hell of a time. But, you know, on Cinco de Mayo and it happening not in this country, it's one of those where I think Billy Joe would need, you're going to need a knockout to get a draw. You know? From that point of view, I think for that fight, if that fight happened, the deck is heavily stacked in Canelo's favor, and that's one of the reasons. That's a big factor in why I'd be leaning that way. But again, you know, Billy Joe, I'd be supporting him. I'd watching it on TV. I'd be go on, Billy, stick one on him and that. But putting that bias to one side, I think Canelo probably would win.
Again, you know, if that fight did take place on Cinco de Mayo, I could actually have seen Billy Joe boxing tremendous for 12 rounds. But by the time that the scorecards get announced, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't know what would have happened. You know, I've seen it so many times. So the argument would be for me also as well that if they would have fought, he would have had to have knocked out Canelo. And what I would say about Canelo is, mate, his chin ain't suspect. He took shots from Golovkin in both fights, and he held them. He held him, mate. I think he's got a bit of, I don't know, foam and cushion around his chin, mate.
Well, look at his neck. His neck's bigger than both my legs. big neck. Yeah. And, you know, they say the neck's like a shock absorber. But, I think it surprised me, to be honest, that Golovkin were hitting with big. I mean, they both hit each other with monster shots, but we already knew that Golovkin was a bit of a cyborg. But I think Canelo really proved that, you know, he can take a shot. He really can.
All right. So Glasgow Rangers for life. It's also a wee question. Aye. All right. Mark my word, Billy Joe would knock out Canelo. Okay, Benji, this one's over to you, mate.
I think that would be really difficult. Nothing's impossible, and anything can happen in boxing, but I think it'd be really, really difficult. The other issue as well is, let's just say Billy Joe has the night of his life, and he's just hitting Canelo, fast, accurate shots. Canelo's getting marked up, getting messed up. Again, the way boxing works, when you're boxing a star as big as Canelo in his backyard on Cinco de Mayo and all this sort of thing, the ref is going to give him every single chance he's got. So if Billy Joe doesn't knock him out, to actually stop him, to get the ref to step in, to get the corner to pull their man out, I think it's phenomenally difficult challenge stopping Canelo.
Okay, and what I would say to add to that, Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder Part 1 a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Fury was majestic around the ring. We saw the herky jerky style at its best, and a lot of people thought Fury won that fight, and it was a draw. So the second fight comes. What happens? Fury marches forward, takes the center of the ring, and puts it on Deontay Wilder to get, his corner to throw the towel in. So surely this plays a factor in fighters' minds that away from home, you need more than just to box for 12 rounds and hope for the judges to put the cards and put the scores in your favor, basically.
Well, if boxing fans like us are aware of that, and we are definitely not alone in these thoughts. If we're aware of this, surely the boxers and their teams are going to be aware of it too.
100%. Guys, 4 minutes left on the clock. Smash that like button, get your questions in. We'll try and answer as many as we can before we head out for lunch. Well, I'm heading to the gym. So, all right. Okay. Angry Brit. We're not angry. We're all happy. Christmas is soon. Okay. Canelo would have taken Billy again instead of Smith, except Canelo had seen Billy in camp or lockdown and thought again, I think. Okay, so look. All right, excellent question, because Canelo does seem to give his opponents short notice before agreeing to fight them, all right? So, again, was he trying to catch out Billy Joe before fighting him? Because Billy Joe's in top shape now, but prior to that fight, I don't know what type of shape he was in. But Canelo does try and do that, basically.
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Billy Joe, in the past, hasn't been known for keeping in shape in between fights. He's blown up a few times, because it was around the time when Tyson Fury had blown up big. They were both, I believe, both out in Marbella running together or whatever, and both needed to lose quite a lot of weight. Obviously, Fury had a lot more on him than Billy Joe. But what I'm saying is Billy Joe has blown up a number of times in his career. But I just wonder if now Billy Joe or his team, they've had a sit down and they've gone, look, Canelo's new thing is he likes to give people very short notice. And because of the amount of money and whatever involved, people aren't going to turn those fights down. You get 4 weeks or you don't get the fight. It's a strong arm move around the negotiating table. So basically, you need to train like this fight is 4 weeks away at any time over the next year or so. And I think maybe there was an element of this with Callum Smith, because Callum Smith, he's been living in the gym. And Joe Gallagher said that they keep him in shape all year round. So if you know that Canelo's capable of doing that, and you're in, you got a lottery ticket in the sweepstakes, maybe that's the whole thing. But Billy Joe's gone, well, I'm not going to be caught out by this. I'm going to keep myself in shape. I'm going to keep myself 4 weeks away from being fight ready at all times. So if he does try and play this trick, then it's not going to matter because I'm there. And then maybe Canelo's looked at it and gone, well, hold on, this ain't going to work here because he's keeping himself in shape. Let's try this Callum Smith fella. So it's like a chess match going on outside the ring with all these negotiations and things. It really is. I don't know whether it's clever or whether it's just absolutely ridiculous that we're having all these sort of cat and mouse games outside the ring when it should be about what's going on inside it. Let's have an even playing field. Let's have both sides have a decent build-up, 8 to 12 week camp, and let's stop trying to stack the deck all the time in favor of the A side boxer.
Is there an argument, just to kind of conclude and wrap up, that if you want to be the best of the best, that you should be ready all year round?
Yeah, I agree. I'm never going to argue with that. And again, what's become so sort of customary these days, especially at the higher levels, the sort of higher level you're boxing at, the less fights you have a year. You sort of see the top heavyweights, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, it's 1 or 2 fights a year. If you get 3 fights a year out of these guys, it's, you're very, very lucky. But when you're not quite operating at that level, to get there, I do believe that you need to be in shape all the time. And to be fair to Canelo, throughout his whole career, he does seem to live in the gym. Obviously he's got superstar status now. He hasn't always had that, but sort of pre-Mayweather, just before he really exploded when he was fighting the likes of Matthew Hatton and, working his way through, he was still in the gym the whole time. He's always worked for it and he's always, dedicated himself to it. And I think, if you want to be at Canelo's level, that's what you've got to do.
All right. I think we're going to end it there. Guys, thanks for joining us. Been 90 minutes of pure enjoyment with Benji. 90 minutes just like the football teams do, And guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and then we'll do more lives for you. Anything you'd like to close with, Benji, before we leave?
Not particularly. I mean, thanks for having me. And, I look forward to the next one already. And it's going to be a great weekend of boxing. You said you're going down to the gym now. What are you training?
Me? I'm going to train how to put the hamburger down. But no. No, I'm going to do a bit of cardio, a bit of weights. I'll probably do a bit of triceps. I'm loving it. Now that gyms have opened again, it's time to stay busy, Definitely. All right, guys. Thanks for your time. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Boom. RIP Heavy D. Cheers.